For lesson 3, we're going to be covering surface area. Our learning target is I can find the surface areas of solids by relating the nets of those solids to the formulas for surface area. The definition of surface area is the sum of the areas of all the surfaces or faces of a 3D figure. And the word sum, we're going to be adding all of those together at the end. When you find the surface area of a 3D figure, the units are going to be square units. So just like with finding the area of a composite figure and how we labeled that with inches squared, feet squared, we're going to do that with surface area too. So it's like wrapping a gift. The amount of paper you use that covers that would be the surface area. So we're going to look at this problem here. It says find the surface area of the rectangular prism. So with a rectangular prism, we have this front and we have the back, and those are going to match identically. We have the two sides, and then we have the top and the bottom. So with a prism, they are going to be the bases are going to be parallel to each other. So we see the top and the bottom here, and all of these here are rectangles. You name the figure based off of the base. So this is a rectangular prism. Whereas if we look down below here, these rectangles are not parallel. A lot of students in the past have called this a rectangular prism. This is actually a triangular prism because the triangles are parallel to each other. So going back to the first one up here, we have, let me get some colors here. We have this front rectangle that I'm going to look at first. And I'm going to label this FB for front and back. Now, with the area of a rectangle, we know it is length times width. So here, if this is 13.6, that means this side also has to be 13.6. So we have 7.5 and 13.6. And I'm going to go ahead and type that in the calculator. And we're going to get 102. Now, that's just for the front. We also have the back that matches that identically, and so since it matches it identically, we're going to multiply it by 2. When you multiply that by 2, you're going to get 204. Okay, so now we're going to look at the sides. And it doesn't matter the order you go in, that's just what I'm looking at right now. Okay, so there's your side. And we can see that it's still a rectangle, so we're going to use A equals LW, length times width. Our length is 13.6 and our width is 9.25. And we get 125.8. Now again, we have two sides, so we're going to go ahead and double that. And we get 251.6. Now we're going to look at the top and the bottom. So that will be this piece here. So again, some people think that's a square. It is not a square because those two numbers are not the same. For a square, all sides have to be equal. So we're still going to use our formula, length times width, and we're going to do 7.5 times 9.25. We get 69.375. Our rule for rounding is to round at the very end, so we do not want to round that right now. But we do need to double it because we have a top and bottom. So 138.75. Now that is not our final answer. We have to take this number, and that number to add them together to get your final answer. We have to find the sum. So we have 204, 251.6, and 138.75. And you're going to get 594.35. And now we have to label it. So for your label, it's going to be in inches squared. I'm going to go ahead and scoot this over so I can see it and fit that label in. So that right there is your final answer. Okay, looking at the next one, it says find the surface area of the prism. Write your answer as a mixed number in simplest form. So that part right there is pretty important. What I will say is I would go ahead, if these are not repeating decimals, I would switch them to decimals, and then at the end we will just convert it to a mixed number. So in your calculator, if you don't know what 1 3/10 is, you're going to hit Shift and then the fraction button, and we're going to get 1.3. 1 2/5 is going to be the same as 1.4, and 1 1/5 is going to be 1.2. So it's going to be the same process. I'm going to start with the front and back, just like I did on that last problem. So I have 1.3 and then whatever this side is. So I need to look here and realize that these are the same length. So I'm going to be multiplying 1.2 and 1.3 together. And we do need to go ahead and list that formula. And we're going to get 1.56. So now we're going to double it. And you can show it like last time, or I'm going to multiply it by 2 there. And we get 3.12. Now some students get confused on which number to use, so you might get in the habit of circling the numbers that you use for when you find the sum. So now let's focus on the sides. Still a rectangle, and the sides we're going to use that piece there. So we have 1.4 and 1.2 that we're going to be multiplying together. We get 1.68. So then I'm going to double that because we have two sides. And we get 3.36. So after doubling it, that's the number I will use to add that together. Next, we're going to look at the top and the bottom. So it will be that piece there, and I have 1.3 and 1.4. And we get 1.82. So we're going to double that. And we will get 3.64. So the ones that I circled, we now have to find the sum of. We have 3.12, 3.36, and 3.64. We get 10.12. And we can label that as feet squared. It also says we have to write it as a mixed number, so we're going to hit Shift SD. And that will be your answer there. Okay, so not a whole lot of new things you're learning, but it's a lot more work than what you guys are used to. So make sure you're showing every step. Next, we're going to look at the triangular prism. And like I talked about, this is a prism because you have the two triangles here that are parallel to each other. And that's why it's a triangular prism. It's not a rectangular prism because these rectangles are not parallel. So it says how much paper is needed to cover the gift box shown. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the triangles. With triangles, we have a different formula, and that is 1/2 base times height. Keep in mind the height has to make a right angle. So we have the base as 4, 3 is your height. So 1/2 times 4 times 3, and we're going to get 6. But we don't have one triangle, we have two triangles. So we're going to go ahead and double that, and 6 times 2 is 12. So that right there is a number we'll need to use at the end. Next, let's look at this rectangle right here. Now, we have two of those rectangles because there's two sides. So because of that, we're going to have to double this one as well. We have length times width as our formula for a rectangle. We have 14 here, and then over here we can see that it is 3.6. We get 50.4. And again, there are two of those. So we're going to double it. We'll get 100.8. Now we have this bottom rectangle. And there's not two of those because we have nothing on top, that piece that connects the two triangles. So therefore, whatever we get when multiplying for the rectangle, we're going to leave it as that. So we have 14 and 4, which will give us 56. So now we're going to take those three numbers and we're going to add them together. we get 168.8, and it will be inches squared. Alright, let's do the next one here. It says find the surface area of the prism. This is a triangular prism. It is kind of hard to tell here, but think about like a cheese wedge if you ever did gymnastics or dance, what you would learn how to do a somersault on or something like that. And so it is very hard to see some of these pieces, and that's why I'm going to go ahead and do this one with you. We are going to go ahead and change these two to decimals. 1/4 is the same as 0.25. So we're going to start with the one that we see first, which is, for me, is this bottom piece. So we have a rectangle, which is length times width, and we have 16.25 times 12. And there's only one of those. So we're not going to do anything other than multiply that in our calculator. And we get 195. So next, let's look at that one there. So again, it's still a rectangle, so I'm not going to rewrite it this time. And we have 15 times 12. And you get 180. Then we have this back rectangle. Well, that's the hardest one to see and the one that stumps a lot of students every year. And what it is we have this piece here that's 6.25 and then 12, because if this is 12, that piece over there is also 12. And we get 75. So now I'm going to have to find the area of the two triangles, which is 1/2 base times height. So I have 1/2. It is also really hard to tell the base on these just with the way this is shaped, but you have to figure out where that right angle makes, and you can see that right angle here. So this piece is actually going to be your height, and the little piece is going to be the base, which if we come over here, we can see it's 6.25. So it's 6.25 and 15. And we get 46.875. And we have two of those. So I am going to go ahead and double that. We'll get 93.75. So now the numbers that I have circled, we have to add together. We have 543.75, and it would be feet squared. You could also change that to a mixed number, and we'll get 543 and 3/4. And so you would need to make sure you label that. Have one or the other there. When you have that done, go ahead and flip to that next page. Now we're going to be finding the surface area of pyramids, and I personally think finding the surface area of pyramids are much easier. So it says a regular pyramid is a pyramid whose base is a regular polygon. The faces, or the lateral faces, are not the base of a regular pyramid. They are congruent isosceles triangles that meet at the vertex, which is that point at the top. The height of each lateral face is called the slant height of the pyramid. So here's your net. This right here, if we look at this line, we have to figure out which one of these it's going to be. And that dotted line is going to be the slant height. Looking here, it's the middle, and that's going to be the base. These are all lateral faces. They are all congruent. Okay, so now we're going to look at this next problem. It says find the surface area of the pyramid. And it doesn't say to write it as a mixed number, so I'm going to change it to a decimal just because I know these decimals are not repeating. 4 1/2 is 4.5. 11 1/4 you think of as 1/4, and it's 0.25. So starting with the base, these are the exact same two numbers, which means it's a square, not a rectangle. You'll get the same answer, but the proper formula for a square is s squared. So each side length. So we're going to do 4.5 squared. That's cute. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. So 20.25 is the area of that square. Now we have these triangles, and it says they are congruent. So for the area of a triangle, it is 1/2 base times height. Your base is 4 1/2. The slant height is 11.25. We get 25.3125. Now, a lot of students, for some reason, because a lot of the other problems we had multiplied by 2, you can't do that on this one. There are not 2 triangles, there are 4. And do not round until the very end, just like I did where I left it up on the calculator and pressed times 4. That's probably what I would recommend to do for you guys too. So 101.25. And now we're just going to add those two numbers together. So 121.5, and it will be inches squared. So I want you guys to go ahead and pause the video once you have this one wrote down and try the next one for me. We're finding the surface area of the pyramid. And so we're going to start out with the base, which is still a square. If it were a rectangle or triangle, which you will see some on your assignments, you would have to use that formula, which would be 1/2 base height or length and width. However, this one is the same. It is s squared. So 6.4 squared. And we're going to get 40.96. So next we'll focus on the triangles. Here's your base and your height. And we'll get 19.52. Don't circle that one because we need to multiply it by 4. Since there's 4 triangles, and we'll get 78.08. So now we're going to add those two numbers together. And we'll get 119.04. We will label it, and we will get centimeters squared. So that is going to conclude our lesson over surface area. There is extra practice in, I believe, 2 pages since we didn't do the apply problem if you would like to look at that.